Ottawa's chief of police resigned from his post last night over accusations he didn't do enough to shut down Freedom Convoy protesters. This comes only a day after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked Canada's Emergencies Act for the first time in its history. The Canadian government has vowed to use their expanded power to freeze the bank accounts of protesters without a court order. This includes broadening Canada's, quote, terrorist financing rules to cover cryptocurrencies and crowdfunding platforms.
My colleague over at Reason Magazine, Liz Wolfe, is asking what we're all thinking. Did Justin Trudeau accidentally prove Crypto Bro's point? Liz argues, quote, people ought to have as much freedom as possible to make donations to nonviolent anti-government political causes that are aligned with their beliefs without government insinuating that they're supporting terrorism. The liberatory promise of crypto lies in the fact that it can bypass these intermediaries, make transactions more discreet, something Trudeau's lackeys surely know and seem a bit threatened by. Liz joins us now to expand. Welcome back, Liz.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being with us. So, we've seen this really tremendous crackdown recently with Trudeau and the Canadian government vowing that, the crowd is, kind of pressuring the crowdfunding platforms to not give money, wanting to freeze the bank accounts of trucker protests. So this could be crypto's moment, right? This is one of the main reasons crypto enthusiasts have been for this technology, that it is somewhat more outside the realm of government control, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is sort of the conceptual promise of cryptocurrency, this idea that you can evade government surveillance, that when your government's cracking down on you, possibly sending in cops, sending in the military, freezing corporate bank accounts, and suspending your insurance, doing all kinds of crazy things. The promise of crypto lies in the fact that it really evades a lot of this. The problem, though, which I think we all sort of can foresee, is that a lot of truckers probably are not super adept at using crypto. This is probably not something that they have much experience with. And so there are a bunch of technologists and people who are on the technical side in cryptocurrency world who are trying to sort of bridge that gap to make it much more user-friendly and to sort of teach people on the ground how they can access these quote-unquote wallets, as they're called. But they're dealing with some logistical hurdles there. So though this is the sort of conceptual promise of crypto, it's a little bit difficult to execute in practice. But at the same time, they have no other option. GoFundMe said that they would not support a protest like this and basically redistributed the funds, saying, we're not actually going to distribute these, even though donors have pledged to help truckers. These funds won't actually get to truckers. A Christian right-wing fundraising site, Give, Send, Go, a Canadian judge actually issued an injunction against it, saying that they could not distribute funds to these truckers. So these truckers are in need of food and housing and shelter, all these different things. And yet they've really been stymied at every twist and turn. So this is the conceptual promise of crypto. It is difficult to execute in practice.
So Liz, I finally got into the crypto game the other day because I had to pay a journalist for some work that he did for us in Afghanistan, and the only way to do that is through crypto. So I had to set up the whole wallet and all that stuff, and I had to put my ID in and so it made me wonder, a photo of my driver's license, that sort of thing, and they were talking about how that's required by regulations, this Coinbase wallet. And so that made me wonder, well, how secret is this? I mean, in other words, what capacity do governments have to crack down on crypto if they feel like it? The promise of crypto is that it magically evades government oversight. How true is that?
Well, I think what you're tapping into is that you are using technically an intermediary of Coinbase. And I use Coinbase too. I think they're absolutely wonderful. But one of the problems that we're now seeing is that governments like the Canadian government, and we've seen a lot of this in the US as well, they're asking platforms like Coinbase to report transactions of a certain amount to FinTrack or to the IRS, in Canada and the US. And so there's a little bit of this problem, which is that you need to bypass these platforms like Coinbase because of the reporting requirements that have been layered on. So in a sense, what we're seeing is governments being pretty threatened by crypto technology to the point where they're really targeting these platforms that make things a little bit more user-friendly, but that really deliver some of the same promises of crypto. I think it's a really big problem, and I think we're going to have to bypass that more and more. The problem is that bypassing it is technically more challenging. So, I mean, I would struggle to do that. It seems like you would. I bet a lot of these truckers who are trying to spend their time protesting are also going to struggle with that.
Yeah, I can barely figure out Coinbase. So go ahead, Kim.
I mean, I've had crypto, and I've been big into the crypto game for a couple of years now, and even I still don't fully understand how everything works. I mean, it's kind of complicated and difficult. And they throw new things at you like NFTs and whatnot. But Liz, one of the arguments against crypto, and one of the ways people disparage crypto, is by saying, oh, this is used for criminals. This is for criminal syndicates and for those that want to just commit crime, even though cash has been used forever in this way. I just recently, few days ago, got scammed by a scammer using Zelle. I mean, using my bank account, dollars, and Zelle. So when people say, oh, well, this crypto is a way to bypass, it's for criminal, I mean, what do you say to that in regards to that?
I say the government is currently sort of implying that these people are criminals when that is not the case. These are nonviolent, peaceful protesters by and large. There have to be fully fair and honest. There have been some reports of, I think, some homeless shelter employees who were harassed, or potentially one who was assaulted by one of these protesters. But we're talking somewhere, between 3,000 and 18,000 protesters, by and large, nonviolent, very peaceful, just basically occupying, being annoying, being nuisances, honking their horns at all day, hours of the day and night. But generally speaking, the thing that I would point to is, yes, this type of technology is used by criminals. This type of technology is also used by people that the government wrongly deems criminals, people that the government's trying to crack down on. I mean, I see a huge problem with the fact that the word terrorist ought to be reserved for people who commit wide-scale acts of political violence against their governments. And yet, we're using the word terrorist. We're insinuating that these truckers are that. And that's really not the case. These truckers have pretty simple demands. They're asking for a vaccine mandate to be repealed. They're people who, by and large, operate alone. In a truck cab, you typically have 1 to 2 people. They are interacting with some people at different loading docks. But generally speaking, this isn't a high contact profession. And they're saying, hey, we want the medical freedom and we want the bodily autonomy to make this choice for ourselves. These are not terrorists.
Well, and it just seems the way the government and the crowdfunding platforms, somewhat in cooperation, are handling these is just so wildly discordant from how left-wing protests were handled. I mean, Kamala Harris herself wasn't she tweeting out links to raise, bail money for BLM people who'd been put in jail, which you're fine, rightfully so. Everybody deserves a fair defense and an opportunity to defend themselves, bail funds, etc. But it's like they're pretty, to me, basically equivalent scenarios. And in this scenario, the government is forcing these, to some degree, these companies, and they're doing it anyway, to just be like, no, this kind of protesting, absolutely illegitimate. We will shut it down by any means necessary. You can't be involved in funding it whatsoever. Like, how? It's so hypocritical. It is just obviously hypocritical.
Yeah, I think there's a bigger problem here, which is that you erode people's trust when you basically try to tell them that there are some causes that are right and some causes that are wrong. And there's not a clear principle by which this is true. It sort of seems like it's about the mainstream consensus, and it's about a little bit of a left-leaning bias as in terms of deeming which cause is acceptable to fight for and which cause is odious to fight for. I mean, I don't think people like to be condescended to. I don't think people like to be lied to, and I don't think people like to be told that their belief system is invalid or that their concerns are illegitimate. And so I have a big problem with these platforms, this deplatforming that we're seeing. Although these companies are fully within their rights to do so, both you and I are libertarians and fully agree with that. I do think we both have a little bit of concern with, how will people react and what are the second order political consequences of telling people that the cause that they're fighting for is illegitimate.
Right. Or they just should be honest and say, you know what, our platform we're a fundraising platform for only left-wing causes that we're left-wing branded. They should be upfront about that if that's how they're going to operate.
And healthcare crises.
What?
And healthcare crises.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
All right, we got to run. Liz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll have more Rising in just a minute. Stick around for that.